Hi, friends, and welcome back to the Hope That Helps podcast. I'm Ramsey.
And I'm Camille. And today we are going to talk about fostering teenagers.
Ooh.
This is something I think we're both passionate about. Ramsey, I know, has always said that that's something she would love to do in the future.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily something my husband and I plan to do, but we were open to any age, and that's just so happened to be what we're doing.
So here we are.
Yes. So I think that there's just a lot of misconceptions around this topic, and it's becoming something near and dear to my heart. And like I said, Ramsey, I know too, she works with teenagers, so that's something that's been near and dear to her heart as well. And we just want to talk about why it's important and maybe do some myth busting a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that's just really important to talk about in the front of the episode is the fact that, there are a lot of misconceptions. There are also, sometimes in this space or in any space, the more negative stories seem to be a little bit louder. It can make these type of things intimidating to walk into because you're like, oh, I've only heard horror stories.
Right.
And if you were a teenager like me, then you're like, I would hate to parent myself. That sounds terrible. But I think it can be intimidating. I think it can make people worried or not sure and not have all the information, but there's such a need.
Yeah.
So I just find it's like super important to talk about it today. And maybe you're one of those people that's like, oh, I want to be excited about that. I maybe know there's a need, but I'm a little bit scared. Maybe we can help you kind of navigate through some of those things today.
I think that definitely was me going into this. I wanted to be the person that's genuinely open to any age. But I do think I had my fears about being a younger person myself and then bringing in a teenager. I think that was something I was nervous about. And so now being a little bit into it, I'm like, okay, yes, it's hard, but you can handle it. You can do it. It just takes consistency. It takes some hard work. But so does parenting in general. So I don't think that, parenting a teen is different. It's just a different set of circumstances that you're dealing with.
Yeah, I think it's amazing you guys were so willing to step into an area that maybe was really foreign, especially as young people. Again, we're all on this podcast, late 20s. I'm 30, when we're stepping into these things. And so it's not like we're really seasoned parents already or anything like that. You're a first-time parent, a new parent, but you also recognize the need. I think it'd be good to share with our listeners like a little bit of like what the needs are surrounding teens when it comes to foster care. I think some misconceptions are that a lot of teens either don't want to be in a foster home, maybe don't have interest in being adopted, and that's true for some, but not for all. Maybe they don't thrive in a home. Maybe a group home setting is more beneficial to teenagers, or I don't know. I think sometimes a misconception can be that if we just like kind of put them in this box, then it will be easier,
right?
For everybody, or it'll be better for them or for us as foster parents, and that's just not the case. We know that every single kid, 0 to 18 and beyond, needs to feel the support of a loving and caring home environment. And yes, that may look different for everybody, but I think the misconception is that, teenagers kind of live in this box in foster care and they're not really interested.
Yeah,
in being in a foster home.
They don't want to be parented, or they don't want to make that connection because they're difficult and they've got an attitude and whatever. Like
And that's not true of a lot of foster teens that I've seen. And again, there may be that case out there. I'm sure there are many. But yeah, they have the same basic needs as every human being.
Right.
To feel loved, to feel supported, the need to be parented. I think sometimes we forget that teenagers are like not grown adults yet, especially in the culture. I've seen a lot of my job and where we live and where we work and the culture that we're in. It's very easy, I think, for parents to be like, oh, well, they're independent enough.
Yeah.
They can take care of themselves. And when you come down to basic needs, it's like, as a teenager, it's really hard to fulfill your basic needs by yourself.
And it is a hard space of life. You do feel more independent. I mean, generally speaking, as a teen, you can take care of yourself, you can do what you need to do, but you can't provide for yourself necessarily. And that's huge. And emotionally, you're still not fully developed. It still is, especially when you add in trauma. Something we were talking about is that when you experience trauma, a lot of times developmentally, you're still at that age that you experience trauma until you receive help or, healing from those things. And so I think that was something that I really had to remind myself going into this, because it almost felt like Maymay was like an adult in our home. And I've kind of talked about that a little bit before, but I had to remind myself, like, she's still a kid. She needs support and love just like a smaller child would need. It's just going to look a little bit different, but I can't look at her like, she's just like a guest in my home. Like, no, she's a child that needs guidance, and on her way to independence, she needs a little bit more help.
Absolutely. I think that, if we're looking at statistics show that, again, we can say like, oh, they're independent. Oh, they could do this by themselves. But statistics show the opposite. They show a lot that foster youth and foster teens are almost half less likely to graduate than other kids. They're less likely to join the workforce, which may lead to other things like higher rates of incarceration or even death, as like morbid as that is. Or, way more likely, significantly more likely to repeat the cycle. So either having young pregnancies, not being financially stable, not being able to keep a job, and things like abuse and neglect continue down the path a lot of times. And that's not just because they're a bad foster kid. I don't want to make it sound like that. It's because they have not received, in some circumstances, the help and the support that they do need. And on the other end of that, whenever they do receive that support, they're more likely, to go out and be somebody who breaks the chain of cyclical family trauma, which is awesome. So I think, today we want to talk about like, how do we do that? How do we become a part of that? How do we help them break the chains of like family trauma?
Right. And encourage you listeners that if you're thinking about this at all, like, you can do this, and it's something that it's intimidating, but once you get into it, you I know that's something for me and Zach, we're like, not to say we're perfect at it by any means, but I think it's brought so much out of us that we realize like, we might be better at this than we thought. And I don't say that in a way of like, we're really good at this, but because we're young, I think that maybe that there's less of an age gap, and so we could maybe relate a little bit more and things like that. It's to our benefit.
I think you're dead on, because I think a lot of people think they don't have a lot to bring to the table when it comes to teenagers, especially younger people. Again, we're on the younger end of probably parenting and foster parenting particularly. I feel like that's part of the intimidation is like, what are they going to bring to the table? But then also, what am I going to bring to the table? What do I have? What kind of tools do I have to help teenagers? And you may think like, I don't have anything, but I think like what you're saying is like, oh, we realized we had so much more in us to be able to help a teen than maybe we thought we did. And we're not that far from teenage land.
Right.
Teenage land. We're not that far away from having been teenagers and having that experience. And so I think there's wisdom in that as well. We're talking about a short age gap. I think for me as a single mom, parenting teenage boys at this point, I don't think would be maybe my first thing that I would go to. Just for the comfort and the optics of like making sure that everyone feels comfortable. And I'm not saying that people that do that are weird or have bad intentions. I'm not saying that at all. But for me, I feel like in wisdom, it's like, probably going to stick with maybe some younger kids, maybe the girls. And maybe as I get a little bit older, then I could parent teens without getting weird stares or anything like that.
Right.
And that's not just, I just wouldn't want people's perceptions to be, that something nefarious was going on.
Right.
Just keep it appropriate. You know what I mean? And I look really young too. So I think we both struggled with that a little bit. People are like, you're a parent.
Oh, I mean, just a little side story.
Yeah.
We recently got to go dress shopping for Maymay's prom. Super fun. And all the girls that work at this shop are in high school. They're literally Maymay's age. And they thought I was the one shopping for a dress. And Maymay gets so annoyed at this, which I understand. It's like literally everyone thinks I'm 18. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm not mad about that necessarily. But like whenever it comes into the context of, you're her mom? When did you have her? Like, they automatically, they're not thinking of adoption or fostering or anything like that. So it does get a little awkward or funny that you get stares or, and it's comical, but I'm sure to a level it gets annoying too, because I know I would probably be annoyed at always having to like explain myself.
Right.
If I was Maymay,
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in a home where we had teenagers in our house and also an interracial family. So there was a lot of people that were like, I don't really understand the dynamics here, which is fine. But
you don't have to.
I will say that's another consideration as well. If you have biological children, well, I'm adopted too, so I guess I'm not a biological child to my parents. But
you've been there since birth.
Yeah, and if you already have children in your home, it's whether they're foster, adopt, or biological children, that's another consideration. Just in using wisdom when making decisions about, the ages of kids that you're going to have in your home or what you may be exposing your own children to. Again, that's not to say like, oh, you're going to be exposing them to all this evil if you have a teenager. Teenagers are not that scary, okay? We've all been one again. But just being wise and like, hey, are we having the right age in our home? So again, we want to encourage you to not be intimidated by teenagers, but we also recognize that not everyone is going to be able to.
For sure.
To help in that way.
I know for us, because our age gap's not very large, that is something, with Zach and a teenage girl, like I think that was something we had to consider is like, is that going to be comfortable for this child coming into our home to be around a younger guy as a dad? I mean, we consider ourselves her parents, and I think she sees us that way. But still, I think going into it, that is an important thing to think about. Because it could be uncomfortable, you never know what this child's gone through. And I mean, men, opposite sex in general could be uncomfortable. It's not necessarily just because of a small age gap. But yeah, that's definitely something we had to think about and consider and make sure we were comfortable with that too. Yeah. But also that we could support this child in a way that they need.
Right. And we talked a lot about trauma last week or 2 weeks ago now. We talked about trauma-informed parenting. And in that, we talked a lot about how younger kids and older kids may react differently to certain triggers or even, like you said, certain people, certain, ages, genders, anything based off of their past environment. And so I think a lot of the, quote, scary stories we hear about kids in foster care, whether that be young or teens, are some of those trauma behaviors or trauma responses. Right. So what are some examples, not necessarily in your home, but like that you've seen maybe in teens in foster care or other people have seen that may be a way of acting out when it comes to trauma?
I think, first of all, you have to remember that this child is probably going to have a wall up.
Yeah.
At the same time, they want a loving family. That may be deep down that they're not going to say that outright. Some teens might, but I think that you have to remember both things are going to happen at the same time. So even when you experience a wall coming up, you have to remember, no, they want to be loved. They want to be treated that like they have value and that you respect them. But I think it just goes back to like remembering that they're still a child. They still need love and care just like a young child does. And so, I think, walls can go up and certain behaviors can be defiant or, just not really want to respect authority because generally speaking, their authority figures have not been ones to respect, honestly. That's maybe not everybody's story. There's lots of different reasons why children come into foster care, but generally speaking, that might be why. And so I think when it comes to those things, you just have to remember the why behind why they do things. Like it's trauma informed. You're not just attacking the behavior. You're kind of taking a step back and thinking, why is this even happening in the first place? You may not know the exact situation, but you know that it's coming from trauma.
Yeah. And something I say about my kids all the time, and they're young, as I say, they don't trust because they haven't had anyone who's trustworthy. They don't respect because they haven't had anyone who's worthy of respect. And so, we have to prove that over time. I think as adults, we forget too that kids have the same feelings that we do. If someone's broken our trust and we see somebody just like that person, we're probably going to take a step back and be like, oop, it's going to take me some time for you to earn my trust in that type of relational way. Same as if you've had a really ugly breakup.
Yep.
The next person you date is probably going to take you a little bit more time, right? To be able to trust that person in that way. Same with parental relationships. Yep. I think that people forget that. And even if they're little or they're teenagers, and we talked about in our trauma-informed episode, like teenagers have had more time maybe to process some of these things. They have more maturity. They have more understanding of kind of what's going on or maybe people's intentions or, in ways that people have let them down that maybe a little kid wouldn't really recognize. Maybe they're recognizing that. And so, it does take a lot longer to build trust and build respect. And because of that, sometimes behaviors happen. And even if they trust you and respect you, again, I was kind of a naughty teenager. I think that, those things can still be present. And if we just want to call them for what they are, I don't know if you want to know this, but I think a lot of what people hear in the horror stories are like stealing, sneaking out, maybe acting out with boys and girls, or I don't know, like what are some other examples you can think of that you've heard?
I don't know, just being promiscuous or being a teenager. I think that a lot of the behaviors too, I think they're just associated with teenagers in general. Yeah. So then you add in this kid has had a hard life, has experienced trauma. I think it is funny that we make it two separate things when it's like, no, this is actually what kids go through in general. And yes, sometimes the behaviors could be a little bit more, intensified because of the things that they've gone through. Maybe they're angry or hurt or sad. Honestly, I mean, sadness is behind anger.
Yeah, and again, I think that's things that we see across the board in a lot of teens. But it is harder maybe to parent with somebody that you don't have that relationship. You haven't built that trust or that respect. And so it's like, oh gosh, now what do I do in response to that? That may be heightened for you as well of like, oh gosh, if I had raised this kid from birth, it would be maybe a much different conversation we're having now. But there's a sensitivity, there's a, unfamiliarity sometimes with the people that you're parenting, which, can be tough. But in a minute, we're going to talk about kind of how you guys have had a really positive experience with a teen. And I've seen a lot of positive experiences. So we want to shine a light on that.
For sure.
But first, we kind of want to debunk, all of these things that maybe seem scary or intimidating to you. But I think there is also a piece of reality that sometimes foster parents get disappointed when kids of any age, but particularly I think I've seen this more in teenagers, don't want to have a familial relationship with you. They're kind of just buying their time until they can get out. They want to be independent and they're not interested in having a permanent family.
Right.
I think that happens often, but it doesn't always happen. But I think, it's important to go in, and you could probably speak more to this, but go in with an open mind that, regardless, you're going to support these kids and love them through it, even if they don't want to have that relationship with you moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's something that you do talk about in training some is like, you know, as the parents, you bear a certain load that your child doesn't need to worry about. And I think that kind of comes with this topic as far as no matter what they do, you're going to love them and support them as, you know, as if they literally came from your body. Like, I think that that's something we've tried to reiterate. And that's been a hard journey for us too, to remind ourselves of that, because it's really easy to get in your feelings and to be angry that they don't want to be a part of your family. But as soon as you come back to like the reality of the situation, it's like, well, yeah, no, duh. Like,
Yeah.
if you had been in that situation that kid's been in, would you want extra parents? Or if you've had parents that you didn't trust, would you even want to have that relationship, you know?
Yeah.
Even if you feel like, you know, as a parent, you're doing your best to like demonstrate healthy parenting.
Yeah.
They may still not, you know, respond to that. And it also takes time. They may respond to it eventually, but it still takes time.
Yeah.
I know that's been a journey for us. And so,
Yeah, I think if you even provide a healthy relationship, I've seen cases again where these kids or young blooming adults are like, that's nice, but I'm good, you know? And that is something that they have to work through and they have to decide. But I think you're exactly right. You have to set your expectations in the right place. So I would say, as we're encouraging you to like help in this way and give these teenagers all the love and support in the world, I would say don't set your expectations on forever happy, you know, yay, we had the best time family relationships, because that's not always the case. On the other hand, I think something that we do want to talk about is not just the disappointment or the things that might be intimidating, but the joy and the growth and the work, the good work that is done in foster parenting teens. That's what we mostly want to focus on today. So, you know, you can speak to this maybe a little bit more than I, but how do you feel like support has helped maybe May grow, or you've just seen, you know, in general, we've looked at, you know, some studies and stuff that say that, you know, kids who have this type of support in their life are far more successful. You know, how do we provide that? How would you encourage people? And if you could give an encouragement to say, you know.
I mean, when you're talking about, you know, going from an unhealthy place in life to hopefully a healthier place, because again, I'm not sitting over here saying that we're just the best and all be all.
But you are, no.
But I think that we've really worked hard to, like you said, have an open mind and work on ourselves to be healthy ourselves. Common sense says that if you have a healthy relationship with someone, there's going to bring healing.
Yeah.
And I know that we've seen that. It's taken time and it's taken a lot of work. But it's helped us learn a lot about ourselves too. It's not just a one-sided thing that we're trying to show May a certain way to live. It's honestly brought so much growth for us, and then in turn, we can be much more of a help to her. But yeah, we've definitely seen growth in our home and healing in our home. I do think that we've built up trust and we've built up just a rapport with May. I think that she's seen that we've tried to be consistent and we've tried to be loving at the same time, even when we're disciplining, even when we're having a hard moment. We do our best to have self-control and not like just get angry. Because it's easy to, again, like we said, it's easy to see behaviors and be like, well, this is just so annoying. She should just know how to do this.
Yeah.
And again, I think with kids in general, that's something that's easy to be like, why are you doing this? Like, you know better. It's like, no, they're a kid. Yeah, they have to be taught. And also our worldview is that humans are not perfect. And so if you're not inherently good, you're not going to naturally do good. You have to be taught. You have to be discipled, honestly. Yeah. And so, yeah, we've definitely seen a lot of growth, but it's taken a lot of hard work and a lot of work on ourselves.
Yeah, I think something you're getting at there too is just the whole narrative of like, we should just write these teenagers off, you know? I think that comes a lot of times to one from like seeing the behaviors or maybe not knowing how to handle something. And then also because, you know, I was reading a study that 20,000 teenagers in the last year have aged out of foster care. Mm-hmm. So maybe you don't feel like you have that time. Like, oh, there's such a short amount of time. Like, why would we invest it? Or they don't care anyway, or they don't want this anyway. Mm-hmm. They're not going to respond to it anyway. So let's just stick them in a home or, you know, let them ride out their time. Man, like saying that now, like it hurts my heart because I have such a heart for these kids to be invested in, like you and Zach are investing in May for the long haul, however long they decide. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that if they don't come in, if they come in your home 17, 18 years old, that there's not still time to invest in showing them healthy parental relationships, like you said. Yeah. And I know you guys kind of are on that journey and figuring out what it looks like to age out. I wish we could have May on here. We can't at this point. We would love to, at some point, talk to some former foster youth and former foster teens that have experienced this. So know that that's coming. You know, we're not, again, the only people. Right. We haven't experienced this ourselves. So we definitely want to bring in that perspective at some point. But what does that look like on y'all's journey to supporting even after a life beyond like being in your home in foster care? What kind of conversations have you guys had around that?
I mean, it's definitely been a step at a time. I think we were that from the get-go. It's been a step at a time. I think that we've planned to support her until, like you said, until she wants to fully be on her own. Whether that means being in our home, you know, we obviously want to encourage her to like go to college and, you know, do all the typical things, or even if she doesn't go to college, to go into some type of careers so that she can have a fulfilling life. Not that that's the only thing, but you know what I mean? Just the natural things that you would do once you gain independence. I think we're kind of letting her lead that. I hope she feels that way. I think that we are letting her decide, you know, when she wants to leave our home, like how close she wants to be as far as school goes, because she does want to go to school, those type of things. And I think once we get there, we'll be able to see like how involved we are, you know, because I think at that point too, you also have to consider if they're going to want to be around their family, you know? Yeah. I think we're having to prepare ourselves as it gets closer to her graduating and leaving, that maybe she wants to go back to her family and her life before, and we have to be okay with that. I hope that's not what happens. I hope she wants to come home for Christmas and do all those things, but like we've only been part of her life for a few months. So I think that we just have to keep an open mind and, like I said, let her kind of lead that, but let her know that we're here. Not necessarily like, oh, it's up to you. Like, no, let her know, like, oh, you're not gonna come home for Christmas. Like, you know, joke with her like that, because she's like, oh, I'm gonna come around. You know, like we're obviously letting her know we want her around, but yeah, we have to be aware that we're not the only people that she's known as parents or as family. You know, our families are not the only people she's known as family. So, yeah, it's a step at a time, and I think when we get there, it's probably going to be harder said than, or harder to do than to talk about right now. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we'll see what happens when we get there.
Yeah, I think that's why I have such a large, you know, heart for teenagers and for this process specifically, I think there's such a deficit in the help that we have of people helping these kids transition from, adolescence into adulthood. I think, the state does have things that they provide and there are supports in place, but again, that's missing the social, relational, emotional aspect. Someone can give you free healthcare till you're 25.
Yeah.
But who's going to help you navigate, the difficult parts of life from being 18 to 25? That's a really hard time in life. I know I was learning so much. I know I navigated so much in early adulthood, and I think that is such a need in our community. And again, if we're talking about 20,000 adolescents aging out, that's a huge number of people that need guidance and support and love. And again, we would love to talk to some of those people, I think, in the future about their experiences. But, how can we step into that gap? And maybe that upon hearing this, you're like, that's something I want to do. Maybe I don't want to do foster care long term or adopt in any way. Maybe what my mission is to get in and help teens that are transitioning from one phase of life to another. I know I might not be a permanent parent, or I might become a permanent fixture in their life. Maybe they will come home and eat dinner with me. Maybe they won't. But I'll know that I was able to support them through that time in their life. Man, that's something I'm so passionate about. I'm a little jealous about, if I can say that. That's a weird thing to say. But watching you and Zach on that journey has been very cool for me, as that's something that I really want to help support in. And I do get to support in as a foster auntie.
I feel like you've helped probably more than you know. Because I feel like I'm always like, how do I handle this situation? And you're like, well, you do this, this, and this. And I'm like, yes, ma'am.
Oh, no. I hope not like that. But
no, in a good way. I'm like, yes, I need orders.
I watched my parents do it. My parents had teenagers in their home for many years. I've watched them support them endlessly. And again, maybe they don't have the relationship where they hang out every single week.
Right.
But when hard times come, they're the first phone call, when it's Mother's Day or Father's Day, they get a text or a card. For some of them, they haven't heard from them for years. But just to see and know that they're doing better, I know that they get so much joy and fulfillment out of the time that they spent investing. I think teenagers are investment that are going to return in one way or another. Even if they, end up not going the path you expected, or the relationship doesn't end up going the path you expected, I think that one thing you can expect is that, you're going to be glad that you invested and that you spent the time. I don't think you'll ever regret investing into a child of any age. And so, that's just kind of the encouragement that we wanted to bring to you guys today. Maybe it is bringing up some stuff in you where you're like, man, that sounds like me. Maybe that's something I want to do. I know it's something I want to do. I know it's something that Camille and Zach have done, and maybe their journey on the next case looks different, or, I don't know what your journey in foster care is after this case, and you got a teen the first try. I don't know. That definitely wasn't what you expected, I don't think.
We didn't know.
But if you had any, advice for anybody who might be apprehensive about fostering teens or thinking about fostering teens after this, what would you say to them?
I would say that, yes, fostering teenagers is intimidating. It's very intimidating, especially being a younger person with, not as much experience as someone older than me. It's intimidating. I will say, though, going into this, it's been so rewarding, like Ramsey said. And I think even if it wasn't immediately rewarding, I agree we would see it later on. And that just makes it worth it. And I think that if you are passionate about this, or you feel any kind of tug to go this direction, that you totally should. I think that there's a reason you feel that way. It's so needed. And you never know what's going to come out of it. You never know what surprise is going to happen. I think for us, it's like we truly have gained a daughter, and it's been an amazing experience, and it's not over with. We don't know what's going to come. There's still going to be hard times, but there's going to be really happy times as well. And I think it's helped us grow, and I couldn't have asked for more.
That's so sweet. I think that if you are, feeling that tug in your heart, like Camille said, there are a lot of ways you can help. I think a lot of times we focus on full-time care and full-time foster parenting, but maybe you're meant to mentor a teen or join an organization that helps these kids transition, or maybe join the group home setting, or open your home to full-time care. There are so many ways to get in this space and really make a difference. We hope we were maybe able to shine a light on that a little bit today and give the teens a little bit of love. Well, hope that helps. Wait, don't leave yet. We have something exciting to tell you. You don't want to skip this part today. We have some new bonus content coming your way. We're not going to tell you what it is yet, but if you want to subscribe, go to Spotify or Patreon to sign up, and we're going to get you a little something extra for you guys to subscribe to really soon. So we can't wait to announce that. If you want to keep up with us and see those announcements throughout the week, you can follow us on social media at Hope That Helps Pod, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all the places. And if you're interested in fostering teens, or you have any more questions, you need some help, you can email us at hopethathelpspodcast@gmail.com. We also have a new feature on Spotify called Listener Support. So if you're wanting to support us with something a little extra, we encourage you to sign up for the bonus content. But if you just want to give us something extra, you can go to Listener Support and donate to us there.
And if you like what you're hearing, please give us a 5-star rating. That really helps to get the content out to more people so more people can hear this. And as always, we want to say thank you to our production team, Zach Grimes and Eric Pardo.
Bye.